Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about plotting points. So here we've got a graph, x and y axis, and if we're going to plot points, the first thing we want to know is our quadrant numberings. So when we talk about quadrants, this guy here is quadrant 1, and this guy here is quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And everybody should already know that we always start our points at the origin. Okay, 0, 0. Okay, and if I give you an xy axis to plot points on, okay, so here's x, here's y, and we put some tick marks on here, right? Something like that. Okay, if I ask you to plot some points, so I'm going to say A is 1, 3. Everybody should hopefully know that x comes first, y goes second, and we're going to go 1 to the right, that's positive, and then up 1, 2, 3. That is point A. Okay. If I gave you point B and I said it was negative 2, 1, right? So x first, y second, you're going to go left 2 and then up 1, and that would be point B. And point A would be in quadrant 1, point B would be in quadrant 2. Okay. Let's go ahead. Point C, what if I said to you 3, negative 2, right? X first, y second, so we go right 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 2, and that would be point C. That would be in quadrant 4. And then if I gave you D and said it was negative 2, negative 3, you would go left 2 and down 1, 2, 3, something like that. And that would be in quadrant 3, point D. Okay, so plotting points. Everybody should know how to plot points at this point, but it's something I like to review just to make sure everybody's with me on it. Now, why do we plot points? Well, the reason we plot points is because let's say I gave you an equation. Let's say I gave you an equation. It was something like this. Something like y equals x squared minus 2. And you had no clue what this looked like. You have never seen this before in your life. And you want to know what this graph looks like. Okay? We can actually sit down. So every equation in math has an independent and a dependent variable. Now, the way this is set up, your dependent variable is always going to be isolated. So in this case, your dependent variable is y. Your independent variable is x. You're going to pick values for your independent variable. So I'm going to say negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay? And I know it went off my screen there a little bit. We can scoot our paper up. That's not a problem. We're going to plug those values into this equation and find the y values. So negative 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 2 is 7. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. Negative 1 squared is 1. 1 minus 2, negative 1. This one's 0, so that's easy. 1 squared, we get negative 1 again. We get 2, and we get 7. Okay? Now we can actually plot, that's a point, that's a point, that's a point, that's a point. We can plot these points on an XY axis. Okay, so I can go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for X, and I can go 1, 2, 3 for Y, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, something like that. So there's y and there's x. Okay? And we can plot these points. So negative 3, 7 is going to be somewhere like here. And negative 2, 2 is going to be somewhere like here. And negative 1 is going to be somewhere like here. And then that. And then that. Let's put that more centered. And then that. And then that. Something like that. And you can see the shape of this graph from those points. It's really steep, and then it curves, and it turns and it goes something like that. Okay? And that's how we get the shape of a graph, by plotting points. And so if you're given an equation, you're going to guess x values, plug those into the equation to find y values, plot the points, connect the points, and sketch a graph. This is how we have come up historically with new graphs and new shapes in mathematics, is by plotting points. Okay? The last thing I want to talk about, other than plotting points and plotting points to find the shape of a graph, is intercepts. Intercepts. Okay? Most equations have an x-intercept and a y-intercept. Pull my paper back down here. And a y-intercept. Now something neat happens here. If we are on the y-axis, okay, over here's 1, 2, 3. Over here's -1, -2, -3. But on the y-axis, okay, on this y-axis, x is 0. And if you think about the x-axis, here's y equals 1, y equals 2, y equals 3, y equals -1, y equals -2, y equals -3. But on the x-axis, y is 0. Now what that means is if I ask you to find the x-intercept, of course, now if I ask you to find the x-intercept and I give you a picture, well, the x-intercept is where it hits the x-axis, here and here. That's pretty easy to find. But what if I give you an equation and ask you to find the intercept? Well, it's simple. You set the other variable equal to 0. So, what if I gave you y equals 3x plus 2? And I ask you to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Okay? What if I ask you those two things? Well, for the x-intercept, you're going to set y equal to 0. So take this equation, set y equal to 0. You get 0 equals 3x plus 2. Now what? Solve for x. So you move your 2 over, divide by 3, and you get something like this. That is going to be your x-intercept. Now specifically, I went ahead and put a box around it because that's a habit of mine, but the x-intercept is actually a point on the x-axis, and so that x-intercept is actually going to be -2/3, comma 0. That's going to be the actual point on the x-axis, okay, for this equation. How about the y-intercept? Well, you set x equal to 0. So I take y equals 3 times 0 plus 2. Well, 3 times 0 is 0, so I get what? I get y equals 2, which gives me the point 0, comma 2, because x is 0, y is 2, 0, comma 2. Okay, that is the y-intercept. Okay, this works for any equation. So it would work for this equation here. Okay, set x equal to 0 to find the y-intercept, set y equal to 0 to find the x-intercept. Okay, so that is quadrants, plotting points to find the shape of a graph, and finding x and y intercepts. All of these concepts are Chapter 1, Section 1 of your textbook. So please use this video as a reference and then complete the Chapter 1, Section 1 homework in my math lab. Okay? Now just for practice, just for fun, so I showed you on a linear equation, I'm going to come over here and take this one. Okay? Now, we know this is the y-intercept. and we know that we have 2 x-intercepts. So I'm going to take this concept and use it here. So to find the y-intercept, we're going to set x equal to 0. Okay? Take that equation, set x equal to 0, you get y equals 0 minus 2, y equals negative 2. Where's the y-intercept? It's at 0, negative 2. Well, that matches my graph perfectly. Now let's do the x-intercept. See where that goes. Okay, so for the x-intercept, we're going to set y equal to 0. Okay, so let's do that. I take 0 equals x squared minus 2. Well, if I solve for x, I'm going to move this 2 over. So I get 2 equals x squared. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And when you take the square root of something in mathematics, you're going to put plus or minus because you can get a positive or a negative square root. So what do I get? I get x equals plus or minus the square root of 2. Now, if you don't know the square root of 2 off the top of your head, that's about 1.41 and negative 1.41. Okay? And although I don't think my drawing is very good, it doesn't do it justice. What do you notice? That x-intercept is going to fall somewhere between 1 and 2 on the x-axis. And it's going to fall somewhere between negative 1 and negative 2 on the x-axis. And sure enough, that's what we get. So our answer actually has to look like a point. And since we got 2 of them, we're going to say negative 1.41, 0, comma 1.41, 0. Now that is if they ask for an approximate answer. An approximate answer means we want a decimal. If they asked for an exact answer, okay, if they ask for an exact answer, okay, an exact answer, we would actually use this notation here, and it would look like this. It would say negative root 2, 0, and root 2, 0. Okay? And the difference between an exact and an approximate answer is an exact answer has not been rounded, which means the person who uses this answer gets to round it to however many decimal places they want, versus here it's been rounded to 2, and if I need 5, I'm kind of stuck. Okay, so anyway, this concept works for any equation in mathematics. Okay, doesn't have to be a square, doesn't have to be a line, doesn't have to be anything. Any equation in math, you can find the x and y intercepts by using this concept. So anyway, for chapter 1, section 1, you have to know what quadrant you're in. You have to be able to plot points. You have to be able to plot a bunch of points given an equation and sketch that equation. And you have to be able to find the x and y intercepts by plugging in zeros. Okay? So get your homework done. Email me if you have questions, and I look forward to seeing you guys next class.